Let's take a couple minutes and look at the logical data flow for our show control system. Now, on our far left, we have our Chataigne Audio Master. So this is a PC of some sort, Mac, Windows, Linux, and it is attached to our network. And this is going to be a segregated network. In my case, I have it as the 172.19.0/24 network, but you might have a 192.168. something network. I happen to be using the 172 or Class B, if you like that term, subnet, and I'm just using a /24, so that's 254 clients. Perfectly fine. My numbering ranges is going to go from 0.1, which would be my router, typically, all the way up to 0.254. And my IP addresses are being assigned as a DHCP reservation. You could also do static for some of these. Because some of these are servers, namely the physical lighting console itself, in my case it's an ETC Element Classic, it is also attached to the network. It must have a static or a reserved IP address, so it does not change. We definitely want this machine to be always known as 0.131. My lighting receiver, which is another PC instance of Chataigne, is sitting at 0.55. This is again a static or DHCP reservation. This address must stay the same for the system for it to operate. Third up is my OBS Studio PC, which is a Windows PC running OBS Studio, and I'm using that for my projection output. It is at 0.54, and again, it is a static or DHCP reservation because its address must be known at all times. If your system allows for DNS entries on a local network, you are welcome to make that happen and put the DNS entries in there as well. But I'm just using IPv4 addresses, perfectly fine. The only machine that actually doesn't need a static or a reserved IP is our audio master. And it can be DHCP, it can be static, it can be reserved. We just don't care. It does not receive. It does not have any open ports that are receiving. It is only sending. So it's going to be attached to our network through Ethernet switch or Wi-Fi if you have to, but let's go with the Ethernet. It's going to be sending out OSC messages to a target port of 9001 for our lighting receiver. Now, these red lines do not represent the physical wiring. This is the logical wiring. So all of these red lines would be going to an Ethernet switch at some point, and not necessarily tied together in this visible configuration. But this is the logic for it. So our audio master sends to IP address 0.55 on port 9001 OSC messages. The lighting receiver receives them. And aside from just running queues, internally, it's also going to send out OSC messages on port 9001, targeting to our lighting console, which is 172.19.0.31. It's also going to send out WebSocket messages targeting port 4455 on our OBS Studio PC, which is sitting at 0.54. The OBS Studio PC is running in studio mode, and its main virtual projector is actually a second display port that we have on the back of it, and we're sending that out to our large format venue projector for scenic projection and that type of thing. So this is our logical data flow. The Audio Master is also has a sound card output. That could be USB if you're doing a qualified audio console, such as an Allen Heath Q series, or something else like a Midas or a Behringer that you have attached by USB. It could be a Dante or any other type of network type audio output. It could also just be the sound card on your machine and going out a headphone jack. Just don't break off your headphone jack, guys. But whatever that is, for the time for this example, I've actually set it up as just my Windows sound card output. So it is literally going out the headphone jack, and we'll be hearing that as we go. So this is our logical data flow and how our show control system will be operating. Our audio master is generally the thing that runs all the queues. The lighting receiver has the ability to trigger queues, but more often than not, it's just going to be a slave operator and showing our lighting operator what's going on. And then the OBS Studio PC could also run things manually if necessary. However, it is also intended just to listen to things and respond. So this is our logical data flow. Let's get to the real thing. Greetings, this is a tutorial for the Chataigne Community Module CF-LCL-Show-Creator or Live QList Show-Creator, and the intent here is that this module will be run from inside of Chataigne. This happens to be version 1.10.3, current for when this video is created, and instead of having to drag and drop your audio files individually, if you have a very long list, create a sequence, a state machine, run a second trigger layer in your sequence editor, as well as a slightly improved or simplified dashboard for transport control, as you would use in live theater. This script, the LCL-Show-Creator script, will do this for you. So let's go back and look at, I have a folder here that I just arbitrarily called LCL. You could call it your show name or whatever you like. And I happen to have a baseline Chataigne Noisette project file, and we'll get to that in a moment. Also inside of this LCL folder, I have my audio assets folder. And I have specifically named them in a numeric sequence. This is the order that they will be pulled in and processed into Chataigne. The only other characters I have in here would be an underscore or a space, and that's not as important for the scripting purposes. However, some OSC strings do get upset with other characters. So hyphens are typically okay, but definitely spaces and underscores. If you can do underscores, all the better. That's definitely safe. But spaces and underscores are on the safe list. Try and avoid the other ones, and that's more for OSC than anything else. So I have these just numerically named here. The script will alpha sort this, so it's going to go in this order. You can add A's or duplicate it up, whatever, but it will be alpha sorted, and that's a convenience. You can always reorder things after the fact, but again, this is convenience for you. I'm going to go back up a level, and this is where we want to save our Chataigne project or Noisette file. So I have a baseline version in here, and that's the one I'm going to use because I've pre-built the dashboard, the legacy dashboard specifically, inside of this baseline. It's not required for you to use this baseline project file. However, if you'd like to take advantage of the pre-built transport controls, which are somewhat tuned for live theater performance, then you are welcome to use this. You can still use the AutoScript function without this. However, I find it convenient, and we'll show a demo of this as we go further along. However, of most important, we are going to be using relative file paths for this. It makes it a lot easier to pick up this LCL folder and move it into another drive, another mount location, wherever you may like, or archive it and not have your file paths destroyed. If you use an absolute file path, so something like this whole thing here, here's my my machine name, and I have it sitting on my desktop. If you use this whole absolute file path, you have to recreate this structure on your machine, and this may not translate too well to a different mount system. So I'll be showing specifically as we get into that where that relative file path comes into play. However, it is very important that you save your project file right at this level. So let's go ahead and put this away for now and bring in Chataigne. And this is my reorganization of a new file for Chataigne. So I like to have my sequences over here on the left. I like to have the state machine next to it. I like to have the sequence editor up in this section, and then my utility stuff down in the bottom. And my dashboard is going to be what usually lives down here for performance. So let's go ahead and open that location. So let's get to our desktop and find our LCL folder and our baseline. And if we pop back to our dashboard, you'll see that there's a lot of red here because these items do not exist yet. But once we run this script, we should be good to go. You can run this script by getting it into your modules section, and we do have some dependencies that we need to have before we run this script. Let's go ahead and add ourselves a sound card because this is the audio master we'll be working with currently, and we do need some audio output of some fashion. This could be your normal Windows or onboard sound card. It could be something over Ethernet, so like Dante or an Avio external or something like that, or it could be another USB external thing such as your audio console. So for this purposes, since I don't have my Q32 attached, I'm just going to pop into the inspector and make sure that we're running Windows Audio. That's fine. And you can change your baselines here if you need to, but for this purpose, we'll be fine. We also want to add, in my cases, an OSC module, which is going to be the show controller driver that's going to communicate with our lighting receiver. So out, and I'm going to just rename this here, out to lighting show receiver. Okay. Looks pretty good. Got a little extra I in there. Let's just make this. This name is important later, so let's go ahead and copy that because we'll want to paste this verbatim into our script. This is all we need for our baselines, with the exception of the LCL script. So let's go ahead and that lives under helpers. We've got the LCL-Show-Creator, and I'm going to pop into our inspector. And by default, it's going to start with the Audio Master controller. If you have prior cues pre-built, you can erase them, so you can start from scratch. It will delete everything that you had before, and it will delete everything that you had before. However, since I have nothing here, that doesn't need to be checked. If you do not check this and you have prior cues, it will just add to it, so your ordering might look a little weird. It just drops it to the bottom of the list. It does not reorder the entire list. Our build type is very important here. It's either Audio Master Controller or a lighting receiver. If it's in lighting receiver mode, that will be our second instance that is driving our lighting console and our OBS instance, and it adds a couple items down here, especially in the in and out again. But let's leave this alone with Audio Master for the moment. Our asset folder, this is going to be a rig, audio. Let's go ahead and pull up our folder one more time. So we have LCL, which is our home space, and then audio folder is our first path for our audio, so we're going to put that in there. Add a trigger layer. You can run this standalone with no show control at all, and if you turn that off, you will have to add it all manually if you want. The outbound trigger module name, that is our OSC, so that's why I copied that name, and we want to make sure that that is copied verbatim. So this is OSC out to lighting show receiver, and our outbound trigger command. While this is arbitrary to the system, it must match in the lighting show receiver. So let's undo what we had here for the moment. So it's /sequences /%/play. That percent is a macro that will have its name changed during the build. If I go down to lighting receiver, we see that the inbound trigger command has been changed to sequences %/play, which is what we just had in the Audio Master output. We do have to make sure that these match, otherwise it's not going to control correctly. You know, these commands, just if they do not match, they're not going to run. My outbound trigger command for the lighting receiver, this happens to be what I use for my ETC EOS family of lighting consoles. So this again is somewhat arbitrary based upon your particular situation. If you're using EOS, then you can do that. Other EOS versions may actually have /EOS/ something. However, I use /Q/A/start. That A is a placeholder, which we'll get to when we get to the lighting queuing portion of this video. However, we are wanting to run an Audio Master controller set, so we want to be in that mode, and it has changed it back to sequences %/play. This percent get changed to our sequence name automatically during the run of the script. This trigger time is an offset delay from the top of the audio layer, and if you wanted the cue to actually be fired a second after the audio starts, you can do that. However, 99% of the time, you're just going to want to leave this at 0. So you can always move those triggers later. So once we get all this done, it's time to click the Generate Show button, and off we go. So I had 14 cues, audio cues in my folder there. These does not affect the live output. One of the better benefits is that if you click on this, you can see the wave file and the trigger layer, and this is the name of our trigger sequence down here with our initial trigger sitting right here. That's going to say /sequences /05 technology. This was the change from the percent macro that automatically got renamed /play, and again, this is going out as a command to the lighting show receiver via OSC, and the lighting show receiver will receive this and say, hey, I'm going to play 05 technology as a matching sequence. And we'll get to the reason why the sequences need to match in the lighting receiver portion of this video. But I can look at the waveform here. I can even edit it if I so choose. A little bit of simple DAW features, your digital audio workstation features to change the envelope of it and such. I can grab my master volume so that I don't have to mess with the channel strip on my main console as much, so I can get that all pretty automated. I could add more cues down here if I wish to automate my audio console. So if I happen to have like an ANH Q32 or some console with flying faders or full digital that have a MIDI control for audio levels, I could throw those in here, or mutes for microphones or such, make my life really easy. But for the time being, I'm just going to leave this single go queue, and it's a single go queue that's leaving this audio master instance and going towards the Lighting Show receiver. But we'll get to more queuing with the Lighting Show as we go. But next up, and way tucked down in here, we have our conductor in the state machine. And although it is perfectly fine to just like hit the next, hit the next, hit the next, hit the next, that is a perfectly fine way to run a show. Having a go button and a next function is really convenient, so you can do this underneath the conductor, and if you hit the trigger, it's going to go and do the current one, and the next one. And I have a stop all that is pre-built with the script that just mutes everything and stops all transport, and that's kind of handy if you just need everything to stop. But the best thing about a conductor is that it will, based upon some scripting, automatically go to the next queue. Now let's go ahead and look at our dashboard. And we have a nice transport here. Our current queue is also available. Our next queue is available. We have a pause button, we have a go back, and we have that big old red stop button if we need to. So I'm going to hit go. Here's open stinger. Now please notice that even though I have the queue going and opening stinger is our active queue, it's not shown here in the sequence editor. Okay, the item that is selected in our sequences is the logo reveal. So that's Q3 for me. Okay, this isn't going to move or do anything. It's not going to respond to anything until we get to Q3. So let's go ahead. Here's Q2, and we're going to go into 3. Okay, now we see that we actually have live. There we go. We actually have live playback, and it's tracking our time code, and it's shuttling with the current spot location, and it's running all the way through the end of the queue. So we can all stop on that, and that's a nice view. But you do have to select these if you so choose to actually see this. In a normal show operation, you're probably just going to be hitting the go button a lot, and that's perfectly fine. But this is our introduction to the audio transport, or probably the audio master section. There is one thing we must do in our modules before we can call this done. So let's go to our modules and our OSC out to the show receiver, and we're going to go to our inspector, and we have to tell it what IP address and what port we're going to be using for our lighting receiver Chataigne instance. Is not localhost, but 172.0.19.0.55, and per my schema, which is arbitrary, but you're welcome to use it, I use 9001 as a receiving port for all of my devices. 9000 or some other port for outbound. However, to be honest, you really don't choose the outbound port for most TCP communications. It is the inbound or the remote port that is of value. It is your target that you set. So in this case, this is 19.0.55, which is my Chataigne lighting receiver instance. It is going to be listening on port 9001, so therefore 9001 goes in here. We are now done with this section, so let's get back to our dashboard and absolutely save your show. And we do, as per the initial statement, you do have to save your show. I'm just going to call it audio main in the folder where your audio folder lives. Because let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. If I go to my inspector and choose an audio path, we see that the file path is not absolute. It is relative to LCL. So LCL, which is again an arbitrary name, you could call it any show file you want, but underneath that master folder where our Noisette project file lives is a folder called audio, and inside of that folder is my MP3 file. If I were to browse and change this to something else, if we go here, then it might actually change to a long format absolute path, and you really don't want that because it makes it very difficult to pick up folders and archive them and move them around and such. However, I don't want that to stay the way it is because it's the wrong one, so let's go ahead and just push it back. And we're back at audio dubstep again. I'm just not going to save this file so that I can pull up our recent one, and this is ready to go for our audio master. This is now moving on to the instance of the lighting receiver. So we're on a different machine right now, and in fact the static or DHCP reservation of this particular machine is 172.19.0.55. So this is the machine that our audio master will be targeting when it sends out those OSC messages to port 9001, which this machine is listening on. So I have copied over my LCL folder. Doesn't matter about the operating system, I just have it sitting here on my desktop, and if we go into it, we'll actually see not only do I have my baseline file, but I also have that audio main that I saved. Now, I'm not going to use that, and I actually don't want that in my repo here for working on this. I'm also just going to get rid of the autosaves. I don't need them. But I am going to use the baseline file again. So let's go ahead and open up Chataigne, and go ahead and file, open... let's go ahead and open our baseline. There we go. And we can check to see whether it loaded, because the dashboard should have our buttons in red, so we know that nothing's here. If we go back to our modules, we have nothing loaded, and we do have some more modules we have to have based upon what's going on. Now, we aren't actually running audio per se on this machine. However, here's a fun bit. Instead of having to have the audio department start the queue so that you can preview during your queue session, so this is not during show operations, it's actually just during queuing, you can pop your sound card in here, and you can preview and scrub your cues on the actual audio that's going to be used. Now, there's a caveat here. This is just going to go ahead and load the same audio files that were used for the initial creation for the audio master. If you add or make modifications to the audio files inside of Chataigne by shortening them, clipping them, moving them around inside the sequence timeline or that type of thing, those changes do not follow forward. So this is more of a get all the audio cues perfect, load them into the audio master, and then replicate them here. So this is a convenience. In normal show operations, you probably want to mute your sound card here, just in case if the audio department is right next to you, as is very common in many booths. They might get confused by having multiple sources of audio going on. The time sequencing for this is very close to the point where it's pretty much indistinguishable. But if you have a good audio person and they don't recognize the source of the sound, it might confuse them. So I will go ahead and mute this when we're in show operations. In our inspector, we're just going to say, yep, Windows Audio, no problem. We need some more modules. I'm going to be using OSC as a basic OSC to talk to my ETC lighting console. So we'll pop into the inspector, and we're going to do a different output here to scan not local. Our lighting console is actually on 172.0.19, pardon me. 0.31, and again on port 9001. 9001 is what the lighting console itself is listening to, and that is the IP address statically assigned, or DHCP reservation, of course, because it's acting as a server. So we need to make sure that this IP address does not change, otherwise your messages go off into nowhere. So now we have the audio master talking to this guy, and we need an inbound for that as well. So we need another OSC. And let's go ahead and pop that in here. And you know what? We should name this OSC inbound from audio master, just so we don't get them confused. And I'm going to rename this one OSC out to EOS lighting console. And we'll copy and paste those in a little bit just to pop them into the script. But I'm using two separate OSC modules here because it's easier to maintain after the fact. These could actually have been forced into the script, the LCL script itself, so that you set them up as parameters. However, I find it easier to use these modules because if you don't want to use OSC in the future and the LCL script is hard-coded for OSC, then you're stuck. But this can actually push messages out in any flavor just because it is a transport module. Warning sign here. Let's go ahead and just take a look at what our warnings are. Down in the logger, it's probably our 12,000 port for inbound because, yep, there it is. So we got our errors there. So what we have here is our inbound port technically is 12,000 from the lighting console, and our inbound port from something that will really be listening is also on 12,000. We just need to change that. Now, some things here. Our OSC inbound from Audio Master is not going to be sending stuff outbound. It's just not part of the deal. So let's go into our inspector, and this is our inbound from Audio Master. We will have a real input here. In fact, do you know what this needs to be? It needs to be 9001 because this is what we'll be setting up for this IP. Let's snag this over here just a little bit if we can. We have not that IP. That's a fun one. But our IP should actually be popping up as 172.19.0.55. Let's go ahead and, now that we've saved that, let's look at our logger and see if we're now receiving on 9001, and here's our 172.19.055. A lot of these are just self-built ports. Thank you for ZeroConf and Windows taking care of that. But 9001 is what we have. Let's go into our modules, and we now see that our yellow triangle has gone away. Our OSC out from our inspector, we have our O.31 on port 9001, so that's targeting our lighting console physically now, and again, it's not local. We could change this to any port we want, but as long as it doesn't conflict with something else, we're fine, but we're not listening on that port, so nothing's going to be worried. We need one more thing, and that's our actual script. So let's go ahead and add our helpers, LCL-Show-Creator, and we're going to, let's go ahead and grab our outbound name first, and we'll go to our inspector. We're going to leave our prior cues erased because we don't have any prior cues. We're going to drop this down to our lighting receiver now. So our outbound trigger module name is going out to our EOS lighting console, so this must match. Our asset folder is audio. Alrighty, we have a QA start. So this is a placeholder queue, and I'll show you where these placeholders are. This A is something you're going to change based upon your actual lighting queue in the desk. We don't know what that is. It could be any number of things. It could be 33.5, it could be 107, it could be 6, it could be any order that you want. Technically, because you're just calling queues, you don't even have to call them in numerical sequence. You can call Q15 time and time and time again. If you have a lightning strike or something like that, you don't have to have 15 different light queues for lightning strikes. You could just call that same queue again and again and again if you like. But we'll get to what that A is. It's literally just a placeholder. And by the way, the EOS system does not accept A as a legitimate queue number, so this will never trigger an actual queue if it is forgotten. So it's intentionally the letter A because letters are not legal queue numbers in the EOS lighting system. So it just ignores the command, which means it's a safe thing to put here. If I had Q5 start as a placeholder, if there's a legitimate 5, it would run it. And if I forgot somewhere in my queuing that this flag just kind of sat in there, it would definitely run it. So this is a safe method to make sure that if a flag is not corrected, or a trigger command is not corrected, that it's a safe thing to happen. It'll just be ignored in the dark. Again, our trigger time, no problem. Our inbound trigger module name, let's go to our module. Pick up our OSC inbound from Audio Master, just the plain text name of it, thank you very much. Back to our LCL-Show-Creator, into our inspector, and paste that name. Okay, everything should be good to go here. We have our audio path set. We are going to definitely add the trigger layer. Our outbound trigger is going to the lighting console. This is our placeholder name that's going to start in the flag. Our trigger offset time is going to stay 0 just because it's really not necessary to change. We'll be moving these flags around a lot, not to worry there. Our inbound trigger name is our OSC inbound, and that's, here we go, sequences %play. That's important to match as we spoke about for the audio master section. So let's go ahead and hit the big go button. Here we go. So here's our opening stinger. This should look familiar because it's the same audio sources that we had before, and our conductor should look familiar because it's the same build as we had before. Our sequence editor should also look very familiar. Here's our temp placeholder flag, but check this out. We'll see that our command going out to the EOS Lighting Console OSC module is not the name of our sequence. It actually has that A in there, and in fact if we go to any of them, they're all Q/A/start. They're all Q/A/start. This is something we must edit after the fact, and the reason this is in here is because it is very easy to copy and paste these and beat mark. So let me give you an example. Let's find a nice something that isn't overly loud there. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here just so I can zoom in. Let's go over here. There we go. That's a little too big. There we go. So it's approximately full width of our thing. I'm going to click on my sample trigger here. I'm going to copy it. So in my case, Control C, and I'm going to go ahead here and hit the space bar and play this. And I'm going to press Control V where I feel like it. Okay, so that dropped a whole bunch of more triggers for me, and I'm not really thrilled with where this one is, so I'm going to drag it over to about here. What do I think about this one? That's a little late, so I'm going to drag it over to about here. And this one, yeah, let's put this just where it swells in a bit. That's fine. And this one, 4, we're going to put this right at the tail where that change happens. And 5, we're going to move this right on to that spot. So this graphical editing is really nice because you're actually tracking against the live music at this point, and I don't need the audio department to run cues for me time and time again while I'm trying to get these cues set up. Now, these numbers in here are just arbitrary renaming sequences. In fact, it's all 0, copy 1, copy 2, copy 3, copy 4. You can change these as you like. You just double click and change the name. However, notice it's still all QA start down in here. So this one might be, let's say this is Q2, and this next one is Q3. So I'm just going to go through and edit all of these. I need to have these cues in the console or a really good plan for them, or I'm coming back and editing them again. So that's why it's usually useful to have the cues in the console before you go ahead and do this. So that was, what was this one? This was 4, this one was 3, maybe this one's a 4.5. And the decimals are completely valid because a decimal or a point Q is a valid Q in EOS. So I may have had an additional Q that I kind of stuck in the middle there. And again, it's not necessary to go in sequence. If I really liked that 4.5 and I want to use it again, I can just drop it in here again. And you know, I don't have to go in any other order. I can just carry on from where I was leaving off. Maybe there isn't a 9, so we could go to Q10, and this could be Q11. Again, these numbers are truly based upon what you have in your console. So now if I go ahead and rewind everything here, just drag it back, if we pop in our modules, go our OSC outbound to EOS, and I want to choose that on, and I want to turn the log outgoing on. You don't need to have this for operations, but I want to just show you what's going on here. We're going to go back to our triggers here, just rewind everything, go to our logger, clear everything out. Now when I play this, we just crank the background volume down a bit there. Okay, I'll play this. Here's our OSC commands going out. And that would be triggering the lighting console based upon those cues. Now, some of our EOS family friends might say, it's like, well, that's not our normal OSC command for an EOS console. It starts with /EOS. It's like, that is entirely true for the entire command set. I happen to change the defaults in my lighting console, and we'll show that once we get to the lighting console, so that the OSC Q prefix is actually simplified to this. This also is an older 2.3 platform compatibility, 2.3 I think. If you're on like 3.3 with the newer consoles, you have the expanded commands. Some of the older consoles do not, but they all do with the Q prefix option set up in your OSC options respond to this. Now, there is an excellent OSC EOS module for Chataigne, and I do use it for certain circumstances. However, when it comes to full-on show control in a production situation, the simplest is the strongest. So I like to simplify all of my triggering to as little as it needs to be, and in this case, it's an OSC custom command that's a string. End of story. There's no other parameters on this. There's no other feedback. There's nothing else happening going on. It's just strictly fire and forget about it and trust that the system is functioning. Now, it could be expanded to actually wait for feedback and fire again. However, that's not necessarily a great thing in a show control system where things could go wrong or you are changing things on the fly. But for a nice, solid, simplified system, this works very, very well. Now, there's one more other thing that we can do here, and we are missing our OBS. Now, for OBS, it runs on WebSockets for the most part, and trying to do this via OSC would actually require a different OSC setup. In fact, it requires another piece of software to run in the middle as middleware, and it will transfer OSC into a WebSocket, and that adds complexity. And if you heard my prior statements, I want to reduce this to something as simple as possible. So our availability for OBS WebSocket lives in the software platform, and this is again a community module. And I'm using this to speak directly to my OBS system to trigger cues. And I'm just going to be using the straightforward scene name. So we're going to use scenes, and we're going to pop that into our server path of 172.19.0.54, and that is port 4455 since it is WebSocket. We are going to turn off authentication for this particular module, not because I don't like authentication, but I happen to know that my system is on a segregated network that it does not require the authentication. You can turn on authentication if you want to. It does not get in the way. It does not slow it down any. It's just for ease of transport and simplicity, I'm not using authenticated sockets here. I don't need any of this stuff down below. We could test stuff, we could turn things on and off. I'm only interested in calling scenes. So that's all we need for here. Let's go back to our modules, make sure it is turned on, and there's no other yellow triangles. Excellent. I'm going to come over, and I want a video cue to happen here. So I'm going to right-click here and add a trigger. I'm going to move this trigger around, hit the inspector, and what happens? Well, we're going to add a consequence, and it's going to be OBS WebSocket, scenes request, and I want to set the current program scene for my application. Now, you can do all of these items in any way you like, but I want to set the current program scene because that's going to go from my OBS, since I run in studio mode, it's going to take something from my preview or from the list of scenes and dump it right to live. So what's my scene name? I think I'm going to call it Scene 1. And we'll figure out what Scene 1 is once we get to OBS. But that gets us ourselves a trigger for OBS in here as well. So let's go OBS Scene 1. Again, the names here are any of the names in the flags are arbitrary. They are not necessarily equivalent to what you have down here in the queue name, but feel free to edit those as you like. And once you get into Tech Week and you get all your queuing done, it's nice to see here, see the actual queue numbers in here and watch it scroll by. One of the other things is that in a recovery situation, you do not have to keep slaving to the audio cues, which is why I'm actually not using linear timecode chasing here. But you can actually run this manually if audio for some reason goes down or has an issue. It's time to implement the physical lighting console so that we can actually control our lights and other effects. I am using ETC Nomad on a PC just so I can do a good screen capture for you here for this demonstration. However, this is the same way that my ETC Element or TI consoles might be actually set up. I have my cue list down here, so it's cue list 1, and I have those cues already set up. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get a little more width in here. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12. I don't have an 11 in there. Must have deleted it, I guess. That can happen. Over here on the right-hand side, I have both my magic sheet, so we can just see it in a 2D view, as well as an augmented tab. Not everybody has consoles that will run augmented natively, but here we can see the 3D version of it, because I do have some mover cues in here just for fun. But this is our venue that we use, and it's my real lighting rig, and it's a real set. So you get to have a treat going on at the moment right now. But if I were to go ahead and hit my space bar here and actually run cues, we're going to see Q1 pops in there, which is for me a clean blackout. Q2 is going to be my show preset, so here we have lighting up in green and yellow. Q3 I have going with some blue toppers. Q4 has some more light going on, so we just scroll through this pretty easily. There's some blue. So just to give an idea, these are not legitimate cues for this show, but they are cues nonetheless. So I can let that finish off. Now we can go into our setup to show you what's going on the receiving side of things. And in our system settings, under Show Control, we have a number of tabs here. Of particular interest is the OSC tab. Now, this lighting console is connected to my segregated lighting network, and it is receiving an IP address via DHCP reservation. And that is the same IP address we set up with our lighting Chataigne instance. But the receiving port for UDP, OSC, pardon me, is 9001. This is important. It must match. This is the inbound port, which is my preferred schema for all OSC. And this is where this string is normally blank here. But if you look at the tooltip, okay, you can do %1 as a queue number macro, or %2 or combined for a queue list number. So if your console actually supports multiple queue lists, of which this my particular Element Classic does not, you could add secondary queue lists. But for me, it's /q / the queue number, and this is a macro that's going to change to the queue number relevant to what's coming in for the console itself /start. If we recall back to our outbound command from the Chataigne lighting instance, it was /q /a /start. We then went and edited them, so it was /q /aq number /start, and that's how this is going to translate. We're now over here at our OBS Studio instance, and this is our third real legitimate PC in this case. Our first PC being the audio master, our second PC being the lighting receiver, and this being our third PC. I'm going back to using, instead of Nomad for lighting, we're back to actually using our lighting console, an ETC element, for our actual lighting controller, what's running our lights in our stage. But what we have here, this is in studio mode, and you don't really need it in studio mode. I just use studio mode because I like to see what's in preview and then what's in program. I can hit the transition button and off we go. Here's scene 2. We'll just pop through there. There's some very simple slides, not really much in the way of excitement, but I'm going to go to color and transition that out. So this program side here is what's going to our projector and going live to stage. Our preview is what is selected in this list over here. Now, this is a blind preview, so it doesn't affect what's going out in program. I can just take a look at what's going on in here. So I'm just going to have this selected and highlighted, but we're not really going to be using this in show control mode, because when our lighting receiver sends that OBS command out its OBS WebSocket module, it's going to trigger the program output directly. And none of these in the preview side will actually change. Now, to get this thing going, I need to go up to my tools and choose WebSocket server settings, and I need to enable the WebSocket server. I'm going to have port 4455, which is its traditional one. I'm going to disable authentication, although you could have it, just make sure that your credentials and passwords match, and I'm going to apply that. Now, if I run something from my lighting receiver at this point in time, just go ahead and cue this up here and hit go, and off we go. We actually saw our communication come in from here, and it actually, if you caught it in the background, it ran scene 1, which was what we had put into the OBS command in our lighting receiver Chataigne instance. So that's playing as we go. Any type of cue that would be occurring will just pop in the back there and happen. That's wonderfully great. Now, one thing I want to point out here, there are connectors for an OBS communication into, pardon me, an OSC communication into OBS Studio, and that requires an additional application yet. So it's a middleware piece which I've used and I'm very happy with. However, when it comes to live show performance work, having the system hardened as much as possible is definitely your best bet, and having it hardened really means making it simplified. So the WebSocket is native to OBS Studio. The commands that the OBS web server module in Chataigne we're using are the native commands. It is directly popping into the WebSocket. It's authenticating if necessary. It's running those commands directly. There is no middleware. So in this instance, although it might have been simpler to stay consistent with OSC, 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 and OSC all communicating, it's actually more hardened and more solid to stay with the native type of communication paths that are available. I've also written custom scripts for OBS, but it requires someone to run them. And if a machine crashes, or you need to set up a temporary laptop or a backup or something like that, and you don't have all the scripts and modules and plugins in place exactly like your production machine were, you might get into trouble. So this particular instance of OBS is a native blank instance, like right off the installer. No changes, no plugins. The only thing I did was to enable the WebSocket server settings and actually make my content. Nothing else is changed from stock on OBS. The only item that we have that is not native stock to Chataigne, the only real community module for production operations, is the OBS WebSocket module, and it is very straightforward. The OSC output modules and input modules are actually native to Chataigne. Of course, the community module from the LCL-Show-Creator, the actual script, that's a pre-production script. It does not run in real time. In fact, you can delete it or remove the module after the fact. But all of the modules that are used, with the exception of the Chataigne community module OBS WebSocket, are all native to their applications. So there's no plugins for our lighting console. It's just settings that are native to it. There's no plugins for OBS Studio. Those are settings native to it, and our Chataigne is almost about 99% native as well. So it's nice and simple and solid. Let's get to running a show. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the demonstration theater. We hope you enjoy the performance this evening. We know you bought the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Okay, folks, let's get to this. Up over here, we have our audio master, and we've run a couple cues already. We are currently in Q4 with Q5 next in the cue stack. So if I hit that go button, we'll be ready to go in there. I have Q5 selected just for preview up there now. Moving over to our lighting receiver, we have our sixth cue here as industrial transport, which has our cues in it for our lighting console and our OBS controller. We have also run 03 as the most recent cue, and 04 is next in our line. So let's go ahead and cue in and have 05 cue up and get going. So again, 05 is running. We can see this yellow progress bar here. We saw the yellow progress bar in our master. There are no cues in 05 for lighting right now, so we could just look at that blindly and not affect our output. But Q6 is our next one that actually has all of our lighting console cues in it here. We have our EOS Nomad instance running here. We're currently in Q1 in that because we haven't run anything yet for it. And way over on the far side here, we have our OBS instance. So our next go from our audio is for 6, which is so audio 6, stand by, and go. Here we go. Here's our background noise coming in. We're seeing it previewing on our lighting instance. We're seeing our cues actually execute on our Nomad instance. And by the way, scene 1 is now in our program on our video, if you caught all of that really quickly. So here's our show control system in a box using Chataigne, OBS, and a couple of preparatory scripts. Now this whole series of video was not actually intended to be just about show control, but to introduce you to that LCL script, which takes managing that script list or those sequences into a cue list in a conductor in the state machine to make that a very fast and very painless, in my opinion, process. So you could run that script as many times as you need to get things right as audio files update. Especially, however, in the lighting receiver side, be cautious for the erase all cues button or checkbox, because it will erase all the cues. So any of your hard work, make sure you had it saved or use the Chataigne backups as necessary. But this is something that I hope will make your lives a little easier. We're running with it and loving it. So thanks to Ben and all of the developers that have been contributing to the community. I'm happy to be part of that illustrious group now myself. So if there are any questions, feel free to contact through the Chataigne Discord. You can find us there, and look forward to seeing what you can make with Chataigne in a artful setting. Have yourselves a great day, and thank you.